What up, y'all? Welcome back to another issue of the Blacktop Podcast. We're on episode 10, finally in the double digits. Unfortunately, though, as you can tell, we're two-man gaming it today. So while Christian's been away the past couple weeks, we're down a man in Ruben today. And it kind of sucks because I was excited for Ruben to, pump his chest about the Toronto Raptors. But regardless, Christian, how you been, cuzzo?
I've been good, yo. Busy with school, but I'm done that now. Been busy with life. Not done that yet. But yeah, I'm doing better.
Nice,
How are you
nice.
doing?
I'm good, man. I finished school. Well, I'm doing summer, but for now it's a nice little break. But with that, it's been perfect because we're in the midst of the NBA playoffs. I mean, I can't remember the last
Yes,
time a first
sir.
round was like this competitive. Can you think of any time?
Honestly, no. I think it's always like a consensus every year in the first round that you can kind of predict things more or less.
Hmm.
And you can still do that this year, but I think it's the competitive edge in the playoffs. And I think that's thanks to the play-ins being a thing. I think it really shows like the teams that are coming out of ins are like coming to play. At least this part. I mean, we'll talk about those teams that have been knocked out already.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, no, I think the play in, I think not only from a competitive standpoint, or actually, I guess, yeah, from a competitive standpoint, I think it gets the juices going earlier because especially if you're like a team like the Pelicans who had to get it out the mud, you're kind of more already locked in than the classic eighth seed going against the first seed, David versus Goliath to the maximum like effect, and now we're seeing now. Well, granted they're down 3-2 right now, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm hoping there's a game seven for that series.
Yeah, definitely.
But with that, y'all know how we start every episode. We have our takes. So, Christian, do you want to go first, or how you feeling?
My take of the day.
Yeah.
Um, this one is brought to you by a basketball group that we me and DJ are in with some other friends from home. My take of the day is that Michael Jordan is the GOAT. Um, obviously this conversation can be rebutted back and forth on ours end, but to be completely honest, like one thing that always I think gets me the most is that Ron has always been chasing accolades. Um, and if you're thinking about the greatest player of all time, I think it encapsulates a lot more than just stats. And the fact that LeBron, all it means to LeBron is stat. It kind of washes away him just being the player that really shapes a generation. And to me, that be seen to me as the greatest player of all time. Whereas Michael Jordan Bulls for all 13 years of his career. No, I don't know the number. No,
Well,
year. I
he
don't
had
know.
that short stint with Washington.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, regardless, he did have that short stint in Washington, kind of to end off his career. But um, that being said, pretty much did it all with the Chicago Bulls. Never really chased rings by hopping onto other teams. With like Patrick Ewing or fucking Hakeem Olajuwon in the day. He was loyal to the soil, and it paid off. And it's the greatest story of all time in basketball. Um, you're never gonna look back and be like, "Wow, LeBron was really grinding when he teamed up with Prime D Wade and Prime Bosh." Like, come on, man! Like, what kind of is that compared to like two fucking dudes drafted onto a team and winning a championship, like
Oh,
three championships in a
Dennis
row?
Rodman wasn't drafted, but granted, he also wasn't like.
Well, the first three rings though,
Oh, true.
like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
like given that they obviously had some additions to that team, but no one that obviously put him over the top like a team guard I like fucking sorry Dwayne Wade, like but yeah the second three P even Dennis Rodman we're not really let's not put Dennis Rodman on the same pedestal as players like Kyrie Irving and like whoever else that LeBron has really teamed up with, Anthony Davis, like those are first team players. Like Dennis Rodman is a great player by all means, but he is not like, he's not everything that, say
You're never gonna
Anthony
go to
Davis
him.
is.
Yeah, if you need a bucket, I'll say
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But yeah, that's my take of the day because I'm heated.
Yeah, so these are all guys that we went to high school with, the group chat that Christian's talking about, and they have it out for Michael Jordan, man. The stupidest like reasons, the fact that he can't shoot the three, which what the fuck? Neither can LeBron really, but I think it's insane because I mean, my take kind of goes into that as well. Not necessarily like who's the goat, but I will say Michael Jordan is hands down the greatest player to ever pick up a basketball. I mean, when you compare it to guys like, LeBron's cool and all. If we were to really go by accolades, obviously Bill Russell would be the GOAT, but granted, that's kind of similar to like the Bob Cousy thing. But no, I just think when you come down to it all in regards to who's been able to really get it out the mud and really grind and get that full championship experience from beginning to end, it's Michael Jordan. He's the face of that. Even Kobe. Kobe's cool and all. I love Kobe, God rest his soul, but without the acquisition of a guy like Shaquille O'Neal, none of that shit happens. So when it comes to getting out the mud, I think Michael Jordan's the poster boy of that. Now, for
Yes, sir.
me, yeah, 100%. For me, my take is this. I think the Brooklyn Nets have killed the idea of a super team. And in my opinion, as loaded as their roster seems, I think it's going to be more of the same next season. You know, obviously, if you've been living under a rock, they just got swept by the heir apparent, in my opinion, of like basketball greatness, Jason Tatum. And this is a team that wasn't even fully healthy. Granted, Robert Williams came back, but as we've seen, he's still not 100%. And with that, when you just look at the talent Brooklyn boasts, granted, when you're missing a guy that's making like 20 plus million, there's obviously going to be a big hole there. But even then, I don't think not Jason Tatum, I don't think Ben Simmons would have changed much, especially considering that he hasn't played the entire year. Granted, with next year, I think if they're healthy though, because as much shit as Brooklyn's getting, I think we failed to always remember that they were at the top of the conference when they were fully healthy, and not even like that when it was like still no Kyrie. So I'm excited to see what a full year of them together looks like. But when we think about all the past championship teams, like especially in recent years, a lot of it has been homegrown, and you pick up a few pieces there. The Bucks, obviously, majority of those players are homegrown. Obviously, with the two faces, with Giannis and Chris Middleton, and then you get a guy like Drew Holiday. Uh, the Warriors for like how many they have? 5 rings, but anyways, for the first few runs, pretty much entirely homegrown outside of like say Iguodala, who's not even one of your primary options unless it's to stop with somebody. But just the idea of let's get all the most expensive guys together and put them on a team and let them go to work, I don't think that really works. Because, I mean, when you look at it, outside of, maybe 4 guys and KD, Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving, and Seth Curry, that team's looking very bare bones. I mean, I don't think a guy like Andre Drummond, I'm not saying he's good as good as before, but a guy of his caliber, I don't think should be working under a minimum contract if they wants to. I mean, all the power to him. But I will say, we'll talk about it later, but I don't think it's all just shit and more shit. I just think that this has showcased that the idea of just getting together the most talented top like roster and not let the rest of your roster be filled out, it's not a recipe to win.
Yeah, agree 100%. Like, no arguments really. And I think it even goes deeper to say that, like, you really can't a team in a year and expect to really do a lot. Like, it's obviously shown that with its persistence and believing in, like, Marcus Smart, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum. really every guy on that team. Maybe Al minus that, but come on, let's not like say Al Horford is really. He has been a game changer, but he's he's an old guy. Like, really have been developing the same core for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's paid off. And they just beat like really one of the best super teams that's been formed in you know decades in the history of the NBA. And it just goes to show that you really have to actually like recognize that basketball is a team sport, front office to the coaches to the management to the players. And when you just try to put together like every player and their stats put together, it's not going to necessarily work out to be a good team. Yeah, I mean, you can look at the Lakers in the same conversation, right?
No doubt. That's crazy. Those were the two that were slated. Everybody was saying, let's just skip to the finals, and none of the motherfuckers, they're all in Cancun now. But, all right. So, those were our takes. Some of them were very emotionally charged by stupid comments from other people, but we digress. So, instead of just having these next few episodes all be the same of like updates on the series and updates on playoff rounds, we're just gonna come up with some questions that I have here. Uh, Obviously, there's a lot of it's not a lot of it. All of it's gonna be catered towards what's been happening in the NBA recently, whether it be the playoffs, the awards finally getting done. Everything's up for grabs here, except maybe like the draft, because who gives a fuck about that right now. But okay, question one. Kind
Sure.
of an extension of my take. What's next for Brooklyn?
Man, that's a tough question, honestly. Because like after like talking to them, I still feel that like I don't. I obviously there's positives. They have a great fundamental core to build off of. I just don't know what it's going to take for them to actually become a championship caliber team if it's not in the they currently have. Like another move isn't necessarily going to be what it takes for them to push them over the hump. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Like me, I think it's like getting Ben Simmons playing 82 games next year. I think the first thing, like not 82 games, but at least just the majority of the season to actually like develop the team, not to make any like postseason moves really, and believe in the roster a little bit, build up that team chemistry. Because like really their team makeup is like pretty much set championship run in a perfect world. They just don't have that team chemistry that like a lot of the teams that have been playing together all year do have. Like, you know, minus the like for example, like the KP move on the Mavs, like they've kind of still developed with Jalen, Luka Doncic, and I mean Dwight Powell has obviously been getting more time, Dorian Finney-Smith, and you look at a team like that, and obviously that roster makeup doesn't sound better than the Nets on paper, but because they have been working together for a whole season, it's obviously correlated to them looking like they're going to close out this series against Utah. But like that's just an example, like a team that's actually working together and calibrating together that obviously translates to winning basketball. Whereas this Nets roster has like been playing only probably played like what like 20 like 20 30 games together.
Yeah, like not even half a
'Cause-
season.
yeah. So they play games together. I think that's what my answer is. What do you think, DJ?
Uh, for me, yeah, I think a lot of the same sentiments. I think the main thing to take away though is that as much as on paper it looks bad that they got swept, if you look at it, all these games were very close. I don't think any of them were like more than 10 points. I mean, game one, that's off a game winning basket. Not all of those are guaranteed. Granted, it was a great play. Game two obviously was a bit of a stinker, but they were still in it for most of the games. And I think with that, this team is definitely it's poised for a deep run for sure. And I think a lot of the criticism is fired at Steve Nash, which I don't think is warranted based on the fact that he was playing with some shit cards. Not having Kyrie for half the season, for even more than half the season, KD being out for 6 months, Ben Simmons never playing a game, having to go through that drama with James Harden. A lot of like the Nets season is just based off of just bad timing and all that. And with that, though, I think a big bright spot is the rookies they have. Because, I mean, you got Cam Thomas, who's shaping to be like a creative bucket, a guy who can take you off the bounce and, score at multiple levels. Kessler Edwards proving to be, a solid wing. Not necessarily a guy you're going to start, but obviously basketball is not about 1 through 5, it's about 1 through 15. Well, when you come to the playoffs, maybe 1 through 9 or 10. But regardless, he's a guy that I think has shown a lot of flashes. Dayron Sharp is another solid rookie, I think. With the continued development of him, I see big things. Nicholas Claxton, he's a guy that I think has really taken a big jump. He's shown that he has the ability to defend multiple positions. Needs to work on the free throws. But overall, this is a team that, I think all things considered, this season isn't necessarily like a big stinker. Obviously, you have bigger ambitions than going on in the first round, but it's kind of like the fact that they were even in this position is amazing in a sense. So I just think that once they get to like that year of cohesion and just this added motivation of people already writing them off, I think it might be a little scary for the black for like in Brooklyn next year. It's gonna be interesting for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess the last thing, like, I think it's just a matter of seeing it through and like actually making it happen. Because I think the one case in the NBA that you can kind of look at similarly, but not exactly, like, is kind of the what if situation happening with the Clippers. Like, why is not healthy, and then PG's not healthy. It's almost like frantic and scary that you never see like a full Brooklyn like roster like ready to like play a whole season. Um, I think it's like the same thing with the Clippers, and yeah, it almost feels like it's just like what right now. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no doubt. All right, next question. So if you aren't aware already, for the most improved award this year, it was given to John Morant. Now, first of all, if you've listened to any of our past episodes, we're kind of on the fence about it. Now, obviously, if we were to go by like the letter of the law, he's definitely up there. But I know for me personally, though, I think most improves not necessarily a guy who was already really great because John Morant averaged pretty much 20 points last year. I think it's about a guy who's shown flashes but has really taken that next step. So this is a two-parter. First of all, Christian, do you think there were any big major snubs for most improved? And the second is what's up with the awards? You know, Defensive Player of the Year used to be such an amazing statue of like I don't even know who it is, but it's just a guy down in his stance. Now it's just a ball. It's the same thing with like all these other awards. So yeah, Christian. First of all, do you think there are any snubs? And do you like these new balls awards?
I mean, I think the obvious ones are definitely, for me at least, Dante Murray and Jordan Poole. I think both of those players kind of pretty much encapsulate what it means to be the most improved player. Um, you also kind of see it in how their teams have improved. Obviously, with the Spurs, they're like a developing team, but you've seen like a lot of how DeJounte Murray has like kind of the Spurs to newer heights, even with being such a team. Like he's really put the team on his back, and he's such a positive on the floor. And same with Jordan Poole, where he like kind of went from being like kind of this player that's now beyond the bench when Curry's playing to, basically starting over Curry in the playoffs right now, just because of injury and like being trusted on that level. Like he on another team, like if he were to hypothetically be traded tomorrow, could be the superstar of another team. Like that's how good he's gotten. Um, and it's pretty ridiculous how like someone who is like can be a contender for an MVP, won the most improved player award. But yeah. Also, yeah, the awards, kind of how they're doing it. It's cool like how they're kind of making it more personalized. Like I know in the past like they've kind of just done like different things for every award, how they're kind of like making it sentimental for every like award, but I don't know why they're not giving trophies. Like the ball thing is just kind of like it's so simple, but it's not that cool.
Yeah,
I
no.
don't know.
I think Defensive Player of the Year is the one so far. I'm like, yeah, that should be the 3 point stance, man. But
Yeah.
in regards to snubs, in my opinion, I think there's two major ones. It's definitely DeJounte Murray and Jordan Poole. I would also throw a guy like maybe Miles Bridges in there, where he's somebody who's kind of breaking out of that mold of just being just the lob threat and nothing else. Shoot the occasional three. He showcased improved handling of the ball, the ability to be, a secondary option to LaMelo Ball. And that's on top of the fact that he's already such a crazy lob threat, such a crazy player when it comes to taking you off the bounce into the rack. Uh, and yeah, I think I will say if the Cavaliers are fully healthy and they're on the trajectory that they were on when they were fully healthy, I think Darius Garland wins the award. Just because, like, you know, as amazing as Jaw is, when you come from 20 points to just 27, it's kind of like you've shown the flashes, you've shown the ability to be like an MVP level player. So, yeah, you're improving, but it's also like it's more you fulfilling your potential that everybody is kind of, labeled you with. But yeah, I hope it's not like that for what's it called, for MVP. I hope MVP is still whoever the hell it is, in there, like they're going up for a lay. So, next question. This was just like a little buffer zone between this next one. Are Boston the title favorites after their play in the first round, you think?
Um, this is pretty biased for a guy like me. I honestly think they are. I think like with the momentum they're going off of, it almost is very like reminiscent of like if you look at Jason Tatum, very reminiscent of kind of the passing of the torch where every player has kind of gone through those first few years. Like given, maybe he needs a few more years before he's championship ready. Who knows? Like this is the first round, but I feel like gone through the years of kind of suffering. He's been close, but not exactly it. I think this could be the year that like especially with how every single player is playing in Boston, I do think this could be the year where they're like the genuine favorites to win. And they just have such a well constructed team. It's such a good time for Robert Williams to be back. Um, Marcus Smart is obviously on a defensive player of the year like high. Um, Jalen Brown is playing like exceptionally well too. He's also like fasting Ramadan. Um, so I don't know, man. Like I don't think any team has really shown the kind of strength that they have so far, besides the Warriors. But it's my other take.
Now, obviously, I disagree. Nah, I will say next round is going to be very interesting. The way they're playing is very. I think it's very reminiscent of the Bucks in the beginning of their playoff run, where they're absolutely like. I don't even necessarily want to use the word killing, but they swept them, so they killed them in a sense. And yeah, I think just the way that roster's connected, considering I think that and the kind of the storyline is so well in their favor, low key. It sounds really nice, a team that everybody was saying they need to break up their two best players, and they have this, presumed or assumedly like ugly players only meeting where they call out their top guys, tell them they need to pass the rock more. You look at Jason Tatum; he's averaging 7 assists in the first round, crazy shit. And yeah, I think definitely the passing of the guard, I think, is a crazy thing to look at right now because you think about it like this: they're a team that's not only heading into the second round with the high of sweeping in the first round, but they're on the high of sweeping arguably the greatest offensive player the NBA has ever seen in Kevin Durant. Two of them, in fact, with Kyrie Irving as well. And just that and just Jason Tatum's, man. Jason Tatum's that dude. And with getting Robert Williams back, and I think Al Horford was a big X factor for that first round. He had a 20 and 13 game in round one, in game one, and that's a dude that I think a lot of people forget. 5-time All Star, all defensives, all NBA teams. Al Horford is still that dude, regardless of the age. He has the ability to really help bolster that big rotation that already is like super solid when you include a guy like Daniel Tice. They're a team that definitely has championship depth, but next round will be a test if they have that championship medal. And I will say it's definitely not going to be a short series. I'm anticipating and I'm hoping and I'm ready for a war between them and Milwaukee. That's going to be a good
Yeah,
series.
I was gonna ask because I don't think we have it written down in our questions here, but I mean, quick little side question for you, DJ. How do you feel about, that series went up for your Bucks against the Celtics?
Well, the season series was tied 2-2, and I will say the games that they lost, I think were games where the team wasn't fully there. And I think the only game, I don't remember the first game, but I remember Christmas Day. I'm pretty sure both teams were healthy and the Bucks were able to pull that out late game. Now, obviously, I'm not saying it's going to go exactly like that because these are, at this point in time, basically two distinct different league teams. They're teams that have gone through the fires and ready to see if they can come out the waters with the chip. And I'm not going to lie, I don't want to say that I'm concerned because I'm really not, but I will say the Chris Middleton thing is, it's in the back of my mind, but I think also considering a guy like Robert Williams came back from a tear, whereas he just has a sprain, in the timelines they did, I think Chris Middleton will be back in this second round, and I think we will see more Middleton magic. Not only that, but I mean, you look at the way Giannis is playing. He's playing like a guy that's like been there and done everything, and he's playing like a guy that wants to win. And I think it's the perfect matchup for the second round. This is, like, in my opinion, we're probably getting what honestly could or should be the conference finals next round. And I mean, you look at Milwaukee's second round last year, they went to war with Brooklyn. So yeah, I think all things settled. As a Bucks fan, slightly concerned. I'd be dumb to say I'm not, just with not having your second best player right now. I think he will definitely come back in this next round. But when you have a team with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's one of the most dominant players since Shaquille O'Neal, in my opinion, more in a sense, it's hard to pick against him. But yeah, I'm anticipating 7 games for sure.
Yeah, I think that was pretty calm from a proud Bucks fan. I must admit that was well composed, and I agree. I think it's a 7 game series for sure ahead. Like I wouldn't see it any other. It just they're just clashing teams. One team can't guard the other, but the other team can't guard that other player. Like no one's guarding Giannis, but no one's guarding Tatum. Like
Yeah, that's
they
like
might
my
guard
main
each other.
concern. Yeah, I think I'm curious who's going to be the primary on either. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So
shoot.
yeah. All right.
Okay, next question. I'll go this one. Okay, so considering we're all just locking in the fact that Chicago's gonna lose next game, which in my opinion, there's no reason why they should win next game. I'm probably watch. I'm gonna eat that now. Knock on wood. Uh, is Chicago going to create any smoke next year? This is a team that early on in the season, everybody had their chest pumped up about Chicago. I really wish that. Actually, not really wish. I mean, considering that we have family in Chicago, obviously, would have been cool to see how like the city was there. But no, all things considered, this is a team that I think has experienced one of the biggest falls from grace like during the season. Top of the East, one of the best teams to a team that looks like a shell of themselves. I mean, outside of Game Two, which in my opinion, not to say the whole reason they lost was because Middleton went down, but Chris Middleton was fucking cooking in that third quarter, and he looked he was about to like take over, and then obviously what happened. But even then, what happened in Game Three, I think a lot of people expected Milwaukee to just be, an injured animal, a buck with who's already been shot in the leg, and it's just time to like, mercy kill at that point. But it's in fact been the opposite. I mean, an average margin of I think it was what 30 and 20 in these past 2 games. I think that as great as Chicago is on paper, there just hasn't been that kickback, that heart that shows that they're willing to like necessarily die. I think that guys like Bobby Portis obviously exemplify that. Guys like Giannis exemplify that. Where, I mean, just last year, his fucking knee went backwards and he was ready for the finals. And I just think that, with Chicago on top of the Zach LaVine going into protocols recently, it's definitely going to be. It's definitely going to be a off season. I don't necessarily think they make any moves, but I will. I would love to see what their team looks like fully healthy and similar in the Nets to where, not having a guy like Lonzo Ball for a good chunk of the season, I think really hurts cohesion. And hopefully, everything's okay there. But yeah, I think the team just really needs. They need some wings, man. As great as Patrick Williams is, he's a few years away from his supposed potential of being the next Kawhi. If there's one guy I'm looking to trade, though, I would say it's Kobe White. I think Ayo Dosunmu has showcased his ability to not only be, a solid guard in your rotation, but a guy who can like facilitate. I think he had a 15 assist game. Not only that, I think he's one of, there's shades of Drew Holiday, I will say, and I don't take that lightly because in my opinion, Drew Holiday's the best perimeter guard since Gary Payton, and Ayo Dosunmu is a guy that should definitely be an all rookie team, and I think will definitely make all defensive teams later on. And yeah, I think they definitely have the ability to have a nasty backcourt defensive duo. I think it's just a matter of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan kind of, shoring up and, putting this team on their back as much as DeMar supposedly did that this year. I think, regardless, I think it's a lot with the Jazz where they could go 82-0 if they're not going to do shit in the playoffs. That doesn't really matter. But yeah, I want them to create smoke, but in all honesty, I don't see them creating much smoke. I think it's, maybe a little bit better than this year, but yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's tough because like I think they have to sort out their timeline. Kind of how you mentioned, Ray. Like Patrick Williams is definitely a few years away from really, I think, encapsulating his full potential. But then you have guys like DeMar DeRozan that aren't necessarily young guns in the league anymore, and you don't have really time to waste uh, if they are going to chase that chip. But obviously, he's the star player on that team right now, so it's a matter of like really just, I think, dumping out the rest of the assets and like trying to find that four that can, magically cover the spots that can guard Giannis, guard the Embiids of the world, um, and really fill the shoes that basically Vucevic doesn't. Because I think that's really just what they're missing. Um, they're going to continue to get dominated by every team in the East because pretty much every team in the East has a 4 or 5 that they can guard. Or at least the top teams in the East. And yeah, no, I think that's like what it takes. Like the big man is such an important role in the like game today. Um, like I mean, this might be like for all I haven't been on the last the last 2 episodes, but this could be the 10th time we mentioned Miles Bridges for all we know. But he could be the guy, for example, that could really at least start to fill that defensive role, space the floor a bit better, um, and just kind of like elevate them. But that's like kind of just hypothetical, obviously. At this point, I just think, yeah, you're probably right. They do need to dump. I would assume can definitely play that beat. Um, Patrick Williams could be that dude, but not right now, and I could see them dumping him off too. But this is those are hypotheticals. I don't think that's going to happen. The reason I kind of agree that they're not going to create smoke next year, or they're kind of be the same thing that they were this year. Which is unfortunate because I want to see DeMar DeRozan win a ring. But yeah,
No doubt. Alrighty. This one's for you, Ruben. What happens if the Sixers lose this series? Now, if you've been living under a rock, the Philadelphia 76ers took a commanding, if not damning, 3-0 lead. If you've been living under an even deeper rock, no team has ever completed a 3-0 comeback. Obviously, there's been a few that forced game sevens, but no team that's ever been down that bad has been ever been able to really get over the hump. And the way the Raptors are playing, I'm not saying they're going to do it, but I'll say this in order to be somewhat of a neutral, not really, but whenever you're playing down against a Doc Rivers coach team, there's always a chance. If you guys have never seen it, I think one of my favorite mic'd up moments is Phil Jackson in the huddle against the Celtics, and he just flat out says these guys know how to lose games. They like give up the most points in the fourth quarter. They lose the most games when it comes to the clutch. And the way the Sixers are performing, a lot of that I think is holding true. But in regards to what happens, I think first of all, Doc Rivers gets fired. Second of all, I think everybody's just going to come for James Harden's head. You know, this is a guy that was supposed to come in and really, not say be a culture changer, but be a culture improver. You know, this is a dude that's frankly the best shooting guard since Dwayne Wade and Kobe Bryant. And we've seen his ability to transition into that PG role. And not only that, you see the emergence of a guy like Tyrese Maxey, who once they gave him his starting spot, is never given a reason to really let it go. That considered the fact that Philadelphia was playing a man down for a majority of the season. Now they finally got a full squad. It's been great to see. Tobias Harris has been balling, but Nick Nurse, I think, is by far the best coach in the NBA right now. I don't think there's any coach that could really, not to say that Toronto's personnel is bad, but just the way that they play and the way Nick Nurse has been able to game plan has been crazy to see. I think not only that, I've been very happy to see Gary Trent Jr. balling out. He's one of my favorite up and coming players. OG Anunoby's finally showcasing the fact that he's a top dog. Pascal Siakam's playing like an All NBA player, and shoot, yeah, I think first of all it'd be one of the craziest things to happen in the NBA like history, and it would be one of the biggest memes of all time.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, what happens if the Sixers lose the series? I think, oh God, I don't even know what happens. Like, I think it just further solidifies like a lot of things, like that what James Harden is in that dude. Because respectfully, I know a lot of people will disagree. I just don't think he's really ever been that dude. I mean, he obviously has nothing to show for it besides his. It's like sure he's that dude, like in terms of like individual accolades, but when you really look at him, he's never really done anything for a team positively, to the point where he's gone to. He hasn't. No, he's gone to the finals once. That
Yeah, the
was
the
in
one
a.
year
Oh,
with the Thunder.
that doesn't count. That whoever is listening to this, stop. You cannot argue with that. Come on, he was coming off the bench. He didn't even have a beard yet. Like, or if it was a mini beard. That's fucking stupid. Anyways, no, yeah. Uh, I don't know. I don't think he's really ever been that dude. He's obviously a talented player, but he's really like, in my mind, he just kind of falls into the same category as Russ, where it's like, he's a great player, but he's never going to amount to anything because he doesn't make players around him better. He's definitely been doing something for Philadelphia, lie, but he's not doing, I think, what they've expected of him. Really, they traded away like a lot of their future just to get this one motherfucker on their team, and they're losing to really like a young Raptors team. Like to give up 2 games to a young Raptors team, like on paper, like this should have been a sweep of a series too, in my opinion. But it's not because I don't know. There's a lot of question marks. I think Doc Rivers gets fired too. That's an obvious one. This dude. I don't even know why he has a job in the NBA, frankly. But yeah. Um, Next question.
Yeah, I think to add, I think unless the Sixers win a championship this year, Doc Rivers should get canned.
Yeah, like how does Mark Jackson not have a job, but this
Oh
dude does?
man, he's in the running for the Sacramento job. I heard, which I would like to see because we've seen his
That'd be dope.
ability to turn young PGs into gods.
Yes, sir.
But that's a question for to handle for another time. All right, so while that was a series that is still ongoing, let's talk about one that concluded tonight as the Atlanta Hawks, a team that's been banged up, fell short. I think it was 97-94 in the last game. If I'm wrong. Do the Atlanta Hawks trade away a piece, or should they continue to grow together? This is a team that features a lot best like Clint Capella, John Collins. They're obviously anchored by one of the best young point guards in the game, Trae Young. Not only that, they got some solid pieces, some nice depth with Kevin Herter, Bodan Bogdanovic. DeAndre Hunter's really coming to his own, which is nice to see. And yeah, this is a team that I think has a lot of promise, but still a few pieces short. Now it's just a matter of how they go about doing that. What do you think, Chin?
In terms of what they do next season, it's kind of tough because I think they're at a point where they should kind of be showing something. But it's such a confusing team because they're literally in like the Eastern Conference Finals last, and then they were a playoff play-in team this year, and they obviously didn't show up in the playoffs this year enough to really overcome this Miami team. It's almost kind of questionable what they actually need. Um, I've always kind of been a big believer that they definitely need to work on young, but I don't really know what that means when you have a team that's already trying to be built that way. Be because really their team isn't necessarily doesn't necessarily have a true second star. I don't want to say that because John Collins is a talented player, and I don't want to discount that. Um, but I do think maybe it is a matter of bringing in an even better player who can kind of cover some more roles, whereas John Collins, fuck, I don't know, man. This is hard to even give a take because I it's such a confusing team to look at. Um, they have a lot of depth, and I think they might need to sacrifice that if they're not obviously going to get rid of Trae Young. I think there's definitely some of that depth that needs to be kind of taken away from that team in order to kind of board at this point. Uh, I don't know what player in the league necessarily does them, given that Trae Young is just he really is just that defensive liability. Um, I don't think that's like everything to their so they're losing, but I do think it's been an obvious reason as to why, and I think the way we were able to shut down Trae Young and pretty much like make him a useless player during the series, it's a question of like how they can actually work on that for say next year's playoff run if you make the playoffs, right? Um, but it's a tough one because I don't really know what that means for this team, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to Trae Young, I think he's this generation's Allen Iverson. One of the craftiest, best players at his position, one of the best players in the league, but just the way their rosters are constructed and their inability to be threats on the defensive end is really a big hindrance. Uh, I will say though, I think frankly DeAndre Hunter was the best player for the Hawks this series. I think he had 35 this last game. So I do think there's a big bright spot there, and not gonna lie, not to say that they would have won last year because a lot of people are saying that. I think that's fucking dumb to say that they beat the Bucks with just DeAndre Hunter, but I will say it's intriguing. He showcased the ability to be, another one of those premium 3-and-D players, the Mikal Bridges, the Herb Jones, and now the DeAndre Hunters. And with that, not only do I think that first of all, I do think they should experiment with potentially offloading a lot of the depth they have. I think, a guy like Kevin Herter, for example, even though they just gave him a contract last year, he's cool, but I think he does a lot of the stuff that you already get from other guys. If he's not really shooting his threes, what's he really doing? And obviously, you get a lot of that with Trae Young. John Collins has the ability to stretch the floor. And Bogdan Bogdanovic has the ability to be a creative, like ultimate microwave when it comes to coming off the bench. I just think that Kevin Herter is a guy that I think is a big luxury for a team that you know, as many luxuries as they have, should look into getting, some solid Toyota level players. The guys that aren't the fanciest that shoot all the threes and shit, but they're guys that just help you win championships. A guy like PJ
Yeah,
Tucker on
I
that team would
agree.
be insane.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of like too many chefs in the kitchen in a sense, right? Like they
Mm.
have so many players that they could develop, but that kind of prohibits them from developing guys like DeAndre Hunter. Because I'm honestly pretty high on DeAndre Hunter too. Given that he's had a lot of injuries too, it's hard to say that they've really held back on developing him. But I think it's just the fact that they have so many players that compete for roles. Like getting rid of Cam Reddish is just a start, you know. I think they have to like kind of follow in that footsteps and trust the process a little bit more. So that kind of they can get rid of this hiding Trey Young thing and just have players that have do the most because they're just too young of a team. I think still. I think I think they kind of belong to be an 8 seed team and they need to develop into that better team instead of trying to um, kind of hold on to every single asset.
Mm. No, I think
Yeah.
the too many chefs in the kitchen, I think, is the perfect analogy. But we'll see what happens. They might draft another guard for all we know. All right, so speaking of the unfortunate loser of that series, let's talk about the team that came out on top, the Miami Heat. So, if you are not aware, the Miami Heat beat the Atlanta Hawks in what is it, Game 5? Yeah, Game 5. But they were down two of their not only best players but two of their leaders. Kyle Lowry out with believe it's a knee thing, or that might be Jimmy Butler. But either way, they were down Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, yet they were able to snake out the win. So, Christian, how do you think the Miami Heat go about navigating this potentially tumultuous times with two of their best players experiencing injuries?
I mean, even though they're going to go up against Philadelphia or Toronto, I think it's a matter of a few things. Like, I think what they've done best in kind of being a successful team is trusting their roster. Giving at some moment keys to guys like Omer Seven and like is it Caleb Martin that's on that team? There's two Martin brothers.
One of them,
Me,
and
which
yeah,
Martin brother? The Martin brother on their team. Like examples like that, I think it's the matter of trusting their team. Because guys like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, all can kind of have those for that team. Um, so I think it's not a matter of like how some teams will play where, when one star is out, they lean on one star heavily. Like I don't think it's a matter of giving the ball more. I think it's a matter of playing like Miami ball. Because you're going to go up against a team like Toronto. Okay, now I'm not gonna say it's gonna win that series. Who knows? But say they do go up against to right, like that team is really built off chemistry as much as Miami is, and I think if they try to place the ball with a guy like Bam, like hypothetically with Lowry and uh, out, like that's not going to be successful. Especially get that both Philadelphia and Toronto really are like two teams that are really heavy in the paint. I don't think that's going to work. So it is a matter of trusting their other players from kind of everyone to just like step up. And I think like a guy like Tyler Harrow can step up if it is needed. So yeah, I think it's really just about trust. I don't think there's like really much more to it. What do you think?
yeah, I think trust is a big thing, but not only that, you touched on it earlier. The depth that the Miami Heat feature is crazy. Because I mean, if we look at today's game, their leading scorer is a guy who's played like probably could count on my fingers how many games he played this year. But Victor Oladipo finished with 23 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals, and shot 50% from both the field and the three, and 100% from the free throw line. Uh Victor Oladipo is probably like the biggest luxury this year, considering that he's playing on a minimum. This is a dude who's a multiple time All Star. He made All Defensive and All NBA team in the same year, which I was trying to look up how many people have done that because I don't think it's been a crazy amount, but he's in that club. And yeah, I think just the depth that they feature is insane. But the main person I would kind of not necessarily challenge, but I think the one player they really need to step up is Bam Adebayo. I mean, he's averaging like 10 points for the series. Obviously, his game's not heavily predicated on being an offensive threat, but if you're this guy that's coming off an Olympic medal, playing on the greatest team in the world, playing with like some of the greatest players, which KD, Jason Tatum, the list goes on and on. You can't be putting up 10 points per game. Now, obviously, Bam's a big part of the defensive effort, and I think he's been pretty solid on that, given that they held Atlanta, probably one of the highest scoring offenses and one of the most potent offenses, to less than 100 points. So they're doing their job on that end, but I just think that in order for them to be successful, Bam has to be, you know, he's shown that ability to grow from that two-way player, or to grow from that mainly defensive role that he's been labeled with and really blossom into a two-way player. He's a guy that I think has the ability to give you 20 and 10 on any night, but now it's just a matter of him actually doing it. So I will say, regardless of who they play next year, I think one person that really needs to let their presence be known and put their stamp on the series is Bam Adebayo.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. Even though my take was really keen on him, I do think he does need to step up. I think it's just more in the matter of like if he steps up, like it shouldn't just be him getting the ball and like him. I mean, like his game isn't really being the player on the floor has been, but I think the key for Miami is to really like rely on their depth, like kind of mentioned Oladipo, um, to not really change up that game, to just stick to the plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their team has crazy depth. Omer Yurtseven, I think, is a guy who should, if he doesn't have a role there next year, he could definitely be a backup till I'm like 29 out of the 30 teams, low key. But
Oh
all right,
yeah,
so
his stock went up this year.
oh, no doubt, he's gonna have a good job for the next few years. All right, so that's kind of the end of the questions about the specific teams. Considering that I kind of asked Ruben this out the blue, there's going to be some kind of player specific questions. But before we get to Christian's playoff MVP, Christian, who do you believe has raised their player stock the most this season? There's a lot of guys that have been hooping out. There's a lot of guys that have been able to perform under the bright lights. But who, in your opinion, has really raised their stock?
Well, that's tough. I mean, the way I kind of look at it is looking back at my idea of most improved players, but obviously that comes you have to kind of think of it in a sense where they think about player stock. It's like how much they're actually valued at. Um, I think like in my mind, like you're talking contracts and like what it looks like in the next few years. I think Jordan Poole really raises player stock because he's definitely deserving of that bet. Um, the matter of if he's going to get it and what's going to happen with Golden State is another question, but he could get a somewhere for sure. Um, I also think, I mean, Scotty Barnes, obviously, his player stock went all the way up this year. We obviously didn't know anything about him and what he was going to be coming into the league, minus his university stats and whatever else. Like, we didn't know he was going to be the rookie of the year. But he was really the rookie of the year in one of the most profound classes we've had in a while. Um, so it's really hard to say, like, how high his stock is. I was kind of looking at a diagram or just like a kind of a picture of all the like past um, rookies of the years, and I think he's definitely up there with some of the better ones. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think he's like Toronto's max player in the next couple of years. Um, yeah, player. You could also go into the conversation of like role players that have really fulfilled more than they've kind of been expected to, like players like Owens, players like Mikal Bridges, Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart is another guy. Man, on this for a while, but Marcus Smart is the type of guy who's like gone all the way up. He's like become quite the facilitator for Boston. If you really look at the beginning of the season and where they're at now, like it is like black and white how good he has gotten at really like becoming a leader of that team. Like it's very I don't know how to explain it. It's very like Kyle Lowry CP3 esque where he really like slows down the game, controls players in a way that's almost intangible. And he locks up when it matters and he gets points when it matters, assists when it matters. But it doesn't obviously always show on paper, right? Um, so I think his stock is definitely up there with those types of players. But yeah, it's in terms of the most, it's probably Jordan Poole still. I think like that dude could definitely get a bag somewhere else.
Yeah, I think all the guys you've listed are definitely in that conversation. Man, I think the only way that Boston is as simpatico as they are right now is the impact of guys like Marcus Smart. 'Cause, I mean, he's the guy that, you know, no bullshit, not to say put the team on my back, but, let's go to war kind of thing. And I think you
Straight
definitely
up.
need that from not only one of your best players, but your biggest leader. And I think he is that for that Boston team. For me though, I will say I think the one person you missed is the person that I think has raised their stock the most is Brandon Ingram. First time
Mm,
playoffs, averaging, let's look here. Holy, 30 points. Well, granted, this is off of not including game 5, but prior to that, he's averaging 30 points, you know, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, nearly a steal and a block a game, and doing it off of crazy splits. I mean, 51% from the field, 50% from the three, and 88% from the line. I think a lot of people forget that this is Brandon Ingram's first time playing playoff basketball. Everybody wants to, shower Devin Booker with love for the run he went on last year, which all is definitely well considered and well warranted. But Brandon Ingram, man, he's definitely in the mold of a KD. There's no doubt about that. The way they play, their ability to create off the dribble and you know move between people and shoot over people. There's no doubt about that. But I will say Brandon Xavier Ingram is a motherfucking dog. I mean,
yeah.
this is a dude that's supposedly supposed to be this team's second option, but he's playing like the first option. Granted, he obviously is right now, but I think if anything, this just showcases how scary of a team New Orleans has the potential to be next year, especially if they're able to retain all their guys. Jonas Valanciunas, I think, is a guy that's severely underrated and, in my opinion, is a top 10 center. CJ McCollum, we've seen him be able to step out from, underneath the shadow of Damian Lillard and really prove to be a solid leader and a solid bucket getter, which he's always been. And I think he has one of the deepest bags in the league right now. Uh, Even like their rookies, Herb Jones. I mean, we were talking. I will say, as stupid as some of the takes our friends make, uh, we all agree that Herb Jones is low key like the next up for the defensive wings. I think he's definitely in the mold of the Mikal Bridges of the world, but he has some sneaky athleticism. But bringing it back to Brandon Ingram, 30 points per game in like their first playoff run is something that's I feel like is unprecedented. Like the only people that are in that company are the elite of the elite. As amazing as Giannis is, he's not even in that company. That's guys like Devin Booker. I don't even remember how much Kobe averaged at his first, but either way, just what Brandon Ingram has been able to do in a season where a lot of people probably had them written off in the first month. I mean, what was it like 1-12 in their first few games? Uh, the way Willie Green has been able to manage the ship and putting the ball in the hands of this young guy Brandon Ingram. I mean, regardless of how this series goes, it's a 3-2 to the Pelicans or for the Suns right now, but they're going back to New Orleans. I think it's very similar to how the Phoenix Suns were in the bubble. Regardless of what happens, This is a team that's really created a new identity, as have created a new culture going forward, and it's a culture that could potentially be one that's winning. Now, regardless of if Zion Williamson is in that or not, if they do end up trading them, they're obviously going to get something crazy. But just the potential that this team has and what they're looking like with, a dude that averaged 27 points per game last year, was a leader in points per game in the paint. The sky is really the limit for them, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact of how well Brandon Ingram was playing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, respectfully to myself, I think the only reason I missed out on him is because of last year's fantasy draft where I picked him up like when no one drafted him. I think I've been on high on him for a while, and I just think like the only reason why I think his stock has been high for a while, and I think people are just recognizing it now. Not to say you just are recognizing it now, but he's definitely elevating his game. I've just been on him, kind of knowing that he's about to be the next Slim Reaper of the league.
yeah, he's been
Um,
that dude for a while.
yeah, he's been that dude, and I think he's showing it definitely. Like he definitely he won the Most Improved Player award
Yeah, I think he won it the
recently,
same
right?
year he got his All Star selection.
Yeah. So I definitely think like I've been high on him since season, and yeah, I think his stock is going all the way up. Like it's Ingram to the moon.
No, no
Fuck,
doubt.
can't believe I just said that.
Hey,
Fuck crypto.
it's a bold take, but it's not as wild as the fact that Steph Curry is a lucky player. Anyways, last
What?
question. Well, this might be the same thing for you, Christian, but who is your playoff MVP, you would say? Now, obviously, we talk about these guys that have raised their stocks, but not necessarily who's raised their stock the most, but in regards to how all these series have played out so far, who would you say, if we were to call it today, has been the best player in these last couple of weeks?
I gotta pull up this guy's stats right now just to see where he's at, and I'm pretty bad at navigating stats. But to be honest, it's gotta be Jason Tatum, man. Like I, in terms of playoff MVP, like I was having conversations today over dinner, but I just think he's like really like starting to flourish into like the next, and not necessarily the next, but like the next coming of like Kobe Bryant. Like is the he is the predecessor. He is the apprentice, true apprentice. It's never been Devin Booker. It'll never be Devin Booker. It's Jason Tatum. I think it's because like, I mean, not even knowing his stats, but you mentioning that he was averaging 7 assists per game, like, in the series against Brooklyn. Like that's like just leader stuff right there. Like I think to really step up your where you're obviously weak and where you're not obviously present, like unwarranted and not noticeable amongst a lot of players in the league. A lot of players in the league will kind of stick to their niche stat line, like where they're comfortable, and necessarily raise and like live above that. And the people that do are really the great players. Like Giannis like I mean Giannis lives in like a stat line of his own. He's always putting up crazy numbers, but Giannis literally had like a 50-point game in the NBA Finals. Like that is like just like going to a level that he knows beyond himself. Um, and I think that's really showing of Jason Tatum right now. I think he's like just looking at all these teams that are in the playoffs right now. I think he is my player for MVP, playoff MVP at least. I just don't see any like really raising the stakes as much as he is. But that's all guys because he's my favorite player. So next.
Hey, that's all well warranted. For me, well, I asked Ruben this at the end of uh, kind of off the cuff last week, and I forgot who he said, but I said Jordan Poole. But I think to just add to the fact that Jason Tatum, when we think of Kobe Bryant, Obviously, he's an amazing player. He's one of a kind, but he always talks about how much he padded his game off of, Michael Jordan, how much a lot of the moves he had and a lot of like the ways he approached the game was because of not info he was able to get from Michael Jordan, but from all these other players. I think it's a lot of the thing where a lot of people say there's no innovation in basketball, and I agree with that to an extent, but I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that there are these players who have figured out the game on such a cerebral and such a masterful level that I don't think it gets any better than that. Kobe Bryant, I think, is an example of that. And I 100% agree. Jason Tatum is starting to become an example of that. Yeah, I mean, he's a dude who's guaranteed 20 plus a night. He averaged basically 30 for this first round. But yeah, the biggest thing that jumps out is 7 assists. That's something that's unprecedented for him. And considering that that was a lot of the flack he was getting in the early goings of the year, that's insane. Not only that, I mean, 42% from the three. Like, Jason Tatum is that dude. He's a bigger Kobe Bryant. He's, in my opinion,
He's that dude.
yeah, he's just that dude. I think not only that, but he's definitely someone who's raised his stock even more than it already is. And in my opinion, we'll definitely do this later on once the next season starts, which is so far away. I don't even want to really think about it. But when we do rank like our top players, like by positions and then by like overalls, I think Jason Tatum is like top 5 at
The
this
best
point.
small forward in the league, for sure.
It's best fault. No, yeah, honestly, off the top of my head,
Yeah.
yeah, he's definitely
Okay, well, it
in
depends.
the conversation.
Yeah. Depends on like where you're positioning players because he technically can be a power forward too. I think the way they're playing him, he technically is a small forward. But
This
he flops
season, if you go
power.
by Basketball Reference, it's small forward. So yeah,
Then
right
he's the best
now.
small forward in the league. Sure.
Okay, what is
I'll,
KD? What is KD at?
he's power forward for sure. He's got to be.
Oh, probably now. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, guaranteed best small forward right now.
Yeah, it's gotta be Jokic, Giannis, KD. Who's the best two in the league right now? Bruh.
Would you say Devin Booker?
Oh well, I guess Devin Booker maybe, and then Curry. Obviously, no, actually, John Moran was probably up there. To be honest,
You taking John
who
Moran over
knows?
Curry?
Maybe next year. Maybe next year.
All right. I think that all depends on how this
Not
playoff run goes.
not this year. Not this year. But that's not even the conversation we're having. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jason Tatum is the
Jason
best player in the
Tatum's.
league.
I mean, that's not so far off of what this podcast has said before. Ruben said he'd be MVP, which I think
I
if
think
he's
he will
playing
be for
like
sure
this,
one day.
he definitely has one in him. Not one. He has a few in him. I hope he wins. I will say, definitely going to be in the scoring title next year, or in the scoring
Oh,
race.
all right, DJ. Here's my additional question for you.
Okay.
Who do you think do you take on to start your team, Luca or Tatum?
Fuck. I'm going to take Luka Doncic.
That's fair.
I just think that while Tatum definitely has more athleticism, I think when it comes to really locking down the most important role on my team, which in my opinion is the point guard, Luca has the ability to play 1 through 4 in a sense, primarily 1 through 3, but the ability he has as a shot creator, not only for himself but for his teammates, his ability to stretch the floor at unreasonable lengths, his ability to really just be a maestro. Like, I don't think it's far off to say that Luka Doncic is Magic Johnson with a crazy jumper. The passes that he makes, the way he reads the game, you can tell he's been playing professional basketball since he was what, like 15. Like, If you've never seen, Luca was in 2K before he was drafted. It was when 2K still had the EuroLeague teams, and this motherfucker was like a 47 overall. Now he's completely flipped that. Well, obviously more, but no, I think when it comes to really setting a baseline and a foundation of my team, I think that Luca raises your floor as a whole. But when it comes to individuals, I think Jason Tatum is more valuable in that sense. Not that he can't be a facilitator, but just Jason Tatum's like the first thing you think about him is the fact that he's a bucket. Granted, Lucas in that same category, but like when you're thinking about the other things they can do, I think Luca just has a deeper bag in that sense. But it's also like, would you rather have ice cream or like, another crazy good dessert? You can't go wrong there. Who are you taking? Are you taking Tatum?
Yeah, you already got no. No, I guess take Tatum. Like it's definitely a bias, but I think it's just a matter of him being like a player who we haven't really seen the ceiling of, and just I don't know what it is with him. He's definitely just like I think the most special player in the NBA right now. Obviously, there's no statistic for that, but I just he is gone to show that he's like can continue to elevate. He can like shine in big moments. He's already hit like a ton of clutch shots in his career. Dunked on LeBron in his rookie year. Like I just don't think there's really a tag you can put on Tatum just yet, you know? Like
Hmm.
realistically, there hasn't really been like much of a team built around him, and he's already like second in the East. Like you could say for sure Jalen Brown is like his second star by all means. He is. He's an all player. Um, but that also goes without saying that Jalen Brown was just he was drafted by the Celtics too. You know, like that team is just as homegrown as any other team.
Man.
Uh, and they're second in the East, and a lot of that like is really to Tatum, and I think it's because he's a true leader. He can shine in big moments, and he can get you a bucket. Yeah, I think all those things really encapsulate what Kobe Bryant was. And not to say he is Kobe Bryant by any means, but he is the second coming.
He's definitely he has more mama in him than Devin Booker ever could. Devin Booker's a great player, don't get me wrong, but I lost all affinity for him potentially being the heir apparent when he got pissy about a mascot.
Yeah, but that's my take,
Nah,
last take for the night.
I
I
respect that. That's
think
a solid take. There's no real wrong answer there.
no, for sure. Only time will tell.
Definitely. All right, but with that, that has been another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. We are officially at the double digits. That's only going to go up. Hopefully, y'all are still with us when we hit the triples, the quadruples, all that stuff. But regardless, hope you guys enjoy these next few. Would it be months? Yeah, I guess a month or two of playoff basketball. It's going to be the greatest part of the season. It's going to be some of the greatest basketball you'll ever witness. And yeah, truly just hope y'all enjoy basketball. It's cool to have a team and all, but I think once you kind of peel back that lens of just strictly being a fan of a team, man, basketball is such a beautiful game. But Christian, you got anything to end us off with?
Not really. I think just yeah, at the end of the day, enjoy basketball for what it is. Don't get caught up in the hype. Don't get caught up in the stats. Stats are never going to be everything. That's it.
Yeah. With that, Michael Jordan is the GOAT. Stay blessed. Stay
So,
safe. We'll see y'all soon.
peace.